cloudier skies. Now, we do have 2 yellow thunderstorm warnings out from 12 o'clock tomorrow, and this is due to plenty of thunderstorms around during tomorrow evening especially, and these will push northwards throughout the afternoon and overnight to clear Scotland during Monday morning. And this could bring some disruption tomorrow evening, so do check the weather if you are travelling. It will mean that it will be quite a warm and humid start again on Monday morning, but a bit more in the way of brightness, especially across England and Wales. A bit cloudier with some rain across Scotland to start the new week. But further south, showers will soon develop as we go towards Monday afternoon. And not much will change throughout the rest of the week, with showers continuing, though it will stay warm and humid.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, there you are. Good evening and welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Coming up on the show this evening, we'll be joined by George Galloway and he'll give us his no-holds-barred take on the state of politics in Britain at the moment. We'll also be talking about politics across the Atlantic as we discuss Joe Biden's attempts to jail his potential election opponent, and ask also about the future for Julian Assange. And we'll learn all about the truly remarkable discovery of a 127-million-year-old side-necked turtle fossil on the Isle of Wight. All of that, plus plenty of chat with my brilliant panellist, Andrew Eborn. But first, an update on the latest news from Ray Addison.
Thanks, Neil. Here's our latest from the GB newsroom. Now, the King has celebrated his official birthday with the nation during his first Trooping the Colour ceremony as monarch. Around 8,000 spectators surrounded Horse Guards to watch the military parade, which dates back 260 years. For the first time since 1989, all 5 regiments of Foot Guards, that's the Welsh, Scots, Irish, Coldstream and Grenadier, paraded together. That's around 1,500 soldiers. It was also the first time that a monarch has ridden horseback during the parade in more than 30 years, the last being Queen Elizabeth II in 1986. Members of the royal family waved from the balcony of Buckingham Palace as thousands filled the Mall to cheer. 70 aircraft from all 3 armed services took part in a flypast, including 18 Typhoon fighters, which spelt out the King's monogram, CR, standing for Charles Rex. Spitfires, Hurricanes and a Lancaster bomber also graced the skies over London. And, of course, the Red Arrows provided the finale to the occasion, trailing their signature red, white and blue smoke. Well, earlier on, we spoke to members of the public who enjoyed the spectacle.
What can I say? It was almost magical, really, to see him. But what we recognised of him, even more so William and the children, was very, very special.
We were in awe, obviously. It's not something we see every day in the States. I mean, once in a while we see President Biden, but it's not like this. This is pageantry, right?
Yes, I saw the King. It was a very special occasion, having seen him on TV lots of times, but now in real life, so it's really fantastic.
We had tickets in stand with 2 rows from front, so we saw everything. It's been wonderful. And the army, the horses and the musicians were just stunning.
Well, the King's birthday honours list has been released. Among the famous faces are TV presenter Davina McCall, radio host Ken Bruce and former footballer Ian Wright. The joint oldest person ever to be honoured, 106-year-old Joan Willett from Sussex, has been awarded a BEM for raising £60,000 for the British Heart Foundation during the pandemic. And the youngest person on that list, 18-year-old Junior J. Frood from Merseyside. He received a BEM for campaigning against bullying. Annual mortgage repayments are set to rise by nearly £3,000 for the average household remortgaging next year. That's according to the Resolution Foundation think tank. They say that total annual mortgage repayments could rise by £15.8 billion by 2026 as the UK's so-called mortgage crunch deepens. The National Education Union has announced more strike action next month. On the 5th and the 7th of July, teachers in England will walk out in their long-running dispute over pay. The NEU is also reballoting its members to see if they want to continue taking industrial action for the rest of the year. The man charged with the murders of the 3 victims of Nottingham's knife attacks has been remanded in custody. 31-year-old Valdo Kalokani is accused of killing Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates on Tuesday. He's also accused of 3 counts of attempted murder after 3 other people were injured when they were hit by a van. GB News' national reporter Ellie Costello was at Nottingham Magistrates Court.
Well, Valdo Calacani appeared in the dock at about 10 a.m. at Nottingham Magistrates Court wearing a grey T-shirt and grey jogging bottoms and spoke only to confirm his date of birth and to confirm the fact that he was of no fixed address. He didn't need to enter a plea to any of the charges, and he showed little to no emotion when those charges were read to him. Valdo Calacani has now been remanded into custody and he will appear at Nottingham Crown Court on Tuesday, the 20th of June.
Well, 4 people from the same family have been found dead in a flat in West London. A 3-year-old boy, an 11-year-old girl and a man and a woman in their 30s were found in the house on Staines Road in Hounslow yesterday afternoon. Met Police saying that it's not seeking anyone else in connection with that incident. Thousands have been marching in central London calling for a change in UK abortion laws. They've been chanting for the release of Carla Foster, who admitted to taking abortion pills after the legal time limit, resulting in the death of her child. The 44-year-old mother of 3 was given a 28-month extended sentence. Some MPs have been calling for a rethink over laws that ban terminations past 24 weeks, except for in exceptional circumstances. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn too. This is, of course, GB News. Now let's get straight back to Neil.
I make a point nowadays of thinking the unthinkable on the grounds that it's part of how we'll win. When I look ahead into the proposed future, or should that be the future threatened by those who would cast our best interests into a bin fire along with our health and our rights, when I contemplate that digital, net zero, 15-minute ghetto, cashless, fake food future, that all-round rubbish future, let me tell you, it's not just hard to see a happy ending for ordinary people like you and me. I say it's every bit as impossible to see how the nonsense can work out well, even for those seeking to impose that dire future. And I think that's why they've lost already, whether they know it or not. 17th century English poet John Donne said, "Any man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind." I think about that line and remember we're all connected, whether we want to be or not. And I remember that whatever happens to some might eventually happen to all, from richest to poorest. What's going on around us now is compelled change, forced change none of us asked for, and on a global scale. For the first time, a tiny dominant group thinks it can change and certainly has the technology to change, to quote the title of the Oscar-winning movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And for the first time, it's not change for the better, but deliberate change for the worse, at least worse for the vast majority of people. To seek to make life worse for almost everyone without everyone's consent is a bold move, to be sure. It's also a move doomed to failure. Its architects are clever, but a vintage of clever I like to describe precisely as stupid clever. I've read it estimated that no more than 8,000 individuals count themselves among the significant clique making all the decisions. There are almost 8 billion people alive on Earth, which means we outnumber that clique by 1,000,000 to 1. Based on that alone, I say we can get the better of them. I would say it's also foolhardy for anyone, however rich, powerful and clever they might consider themselves to be, to think they can change everything for everyone while at the same time correctly predicting all of the consequences of their actions, and all the while being outnumbered by 999,999 folk disinclined to agree with them. There are many people, we all know them, who refuse to see the future that's being planned for them and steadily set in place, having been duped all their lives. And let me tell you, I know that feeling. The very notion of accepting they've been duped is too much for them, too painful, too frightening. Instead, they prefer to be angry with those who've been brave enough to accept they've been had and to talk freely about it. But the good news is, it doesn't take the billions to overturn the nonsense. As has happened more than once in history, it's the few who will make all the difference for all the rest by the simple acts of defiance and saying no. As they keep telling us, it's all one planet that we share, one big old house. And as it says in the old book, he that troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind. When the national borders are all gone, when everyone belongs anywhere and therefore nowhere, when the farmers who grow all the food have been driven off and transnational cartels find other uses for the land, when there's only fake meat, powdered bugs and genetically modified, patented and trademarked plants to eat, when coal, oil and gas are banned with nothing practical to replace them, when finally too many people have nothing at all in their 15-minute ghettos and are murderously unhappy, what then? I look at the shameful, embarrassing state of politics and wonder which of the hapless, hopeless so-called leaders might be left standing when the music stops. And I know that the many answers that people will demand absolutely cannot and will not come from those sock puppets. I look at Scotland, where the former First Minister was taken into custody for questioning in relation to a crime, while in Westminster the former Prime Minister, the last one actually voted into power by the people 4 summers and 1,000 years ago, has been reduced to writing a newspaper column about his struggle to shed his fat gut. Oh, the irony. Johnson's first column is written to publicise the most expensive big pharma product in the world. Is anyone else seeing the transparency of this? And all around them on sinking ships, their fellow rats ignore the plight of millions in favour of scrapping among themselves. When will anyone in Westminster get the point that no one in their right mind gives a flying fig about cake and parties? The elephant in the room is that politicians, civil servants and scientific advisors evidently knew COVID was nothing to fear. The point is not who ate cake and when and did or did not tell the truth about it. The point is that they flouted rules and partied while people died lonely deaths, denied even the comfort of family. The point is that rather than face up to a single one of the appalling harms and economic disaster they orchestrated, they seek to distract us from the patently obvious by point scoring of the pettiest sort. Then, across the pond, the sitting president of the land of the free is moving heaven and earth to jail his strongest political opponent. Think about that. What's always been the way of tin pot dictators in banana republics is now the go-to tactic for the leader of the free world. Does anyone believe anymore that any of those jokers are actually in charge? I lie in bed at night and think about various scenarios, any one of which might describe our collective future. While none of those are appealing in any way, at least not to an ordinary Joe like me, I also fail to see which of the possible futures would suit the predatory, billionaire, philanthropath class either. While the misery unfolds, the misery made inevitable by Agenda 2030 and net zero and by centralised control of food supply and cash replaced by digital tokens and no way to heat homes in cold climates or to keep homes cool in hot climates and no private transport and no private property and endless wars. While all that's going on, do the obscenely rich plan to hide behind the 20-foot-high walls of luxury compounds, oases of calm protected by private armies in remote areas beyond the reach of a general population denied every mode of transport apart from walking and cycling? Can they really get far enough away from us? Can they ever feel safe enough? Will they eat choice cuts of meat and drink fine wines while the masses are confined at home and chowing down on crickets and locusts? Will their factories keep churning out the mRNA vaccines for monthly top-ups of the pincushion plebs to maintain the validity of those digital IDs? And supposing any and all of that happens and the unavoidable consequences play out, what then? If World War III really does break out, and on account of all the present provocation by the West in the face of Russia and China, such a cataclysm feels closer than at any time since World War II, and when the crop of mushroom clouds spreads across the continents, what then? When the necessary years pass and the radioactive dust settles, and the day comes when it's deemed safe for those philanthropaths and their assorted young to emerge blinking from their bunkers under the compounds into a strangely quiet world, what then? Will those rich, those we might call a kakistocracy, which is to say government by the worst of us, the least competent, will those rich continue to fly in their private jets between airstrips, presumably heavily defended airstrips provided with illicit supplies of aviation fuel, and to sail the empty seas on their vast private yachts powered by illicit diesel? Those billionaire technocrats might know how to contemplate the design of rocket ships to Mars and whatever it is that goes into a brain chip capable of letting a quadriplegic person dance the tango, and who understand the theory behind growing a sirloin steak in a 3D printer. But who's going to unblock their toilets for them? fix the wiring in their luxury homes, sort out their recycling and dispose of their trash? Who's going to mine the lithium and cobalt for their batteries? Who will they boss around then? Who will they lord it over and feel superior to? Presumably those richest and most powerful men and women of a certain age are planning a future that must come to fruition only after they're dead. Supposing, that is, they haven't been so silly as to upload digitised versions of their consciousnesses into the cloud in hopes of being downloaded later into synthetic bodies. I say silly because imagine how tempting it would be for some minion, some flunky entrusted with the care of that digital soul, simply to press delete instead. Imagine as well how a file like that might become corrupted or just lost like any other. If it's the case instead that they're shaping the future for their children and grandchildren, then what kind of world might that be? Will their offspring be as ruthless and as contemptuous of their fellow human beings? Will they look around at a world changed beyond all recognition and be happy? Sometimes I ask myself different questions and contemplate other scenarios. Will those philanthropaths turn on each other before they even finish the job of dealing with us? If they're as intolerant of us as they seem to be, how long before they see their closest competition for resources as an unbearable threat as well? I say it won't work and it won't happen, because I tell you now that when it comes to the wet work, none of the clowns closest to power have the cojones, and the faceless, nameless people in the background are too scared to be exposed, and this would expose them. Our pretend leaders don't have the nerve, certainly not the resolve required to be standing there in the public gaze when the music stops. The unintended consequences will kick them in the bahookie if they think they can undermine and set aside the human need for family, real food and a meaningful future, and that won't impact on them. Then they truly are the anti-human kakistocracy I've long expected them of being. Here's the thing, in the end, what will save us is the natural law, which favours right over wrong and good actions over bad. There's nothing more natural and right than a man and woman coming together to make a family and a home for children. The unintended consequence of denying millions of men and women that right will sweep the bad actors from the stage like a tsunami. The natural human instinct to nurture is stronger than any technology they might attempt to enslave us with. The good and right and natural way of things will prevail, because the universe wants things that way. That's just my opinion, of course, all of it, and you're free to disagree. Keep your tweets coming and your emails all through the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com, and I'll try to get to comments later in the show if time allows. OK, joining me tonight is the broadcaster and lawyer and futurist Andrew Eborn. Andrew, what do you think of what I just said?
I think it's a fascinating vision of the future. And I think you're right. Humanity needs humanity. I was at the tech conference this week, the AI summit, where Rishi made his speech about how he wants to put UK at the front and centre of the new revolution, which is the technology revolution. And it was a combination of both the bleak and also the hopeful. Because PwC say that 300 million jobs are going to be lost to AI, but at the same time it's going to contribute about 15 trillion to the economy. And you're going to work out, well, what are people going to do with all this leisure time? As
where's
robots,
that 15 trillion going to go?
Well, exactly, and who's going to get it? You're absolutely right. Because what the fear is that the big technology companies will get stronger and richer and so on and so forth, and the poorer will just continue to get poorer. But there's a combination. They're talking about sort of railing it all in and making sure you have the safeguards in place. And it was Stephen Hawking who said it's our greatest human achievement, AI, but also potentially the biggest existential threat. And you need to combine those sort of thoughts with it to make that make sense. But you're right about the whole essence of humanity, because we have the ability now to live forever. You talked about being uploaded into the cloud, where you can get a digital resurrection of yourself. And in the last few days, they talked about the Beatles, John Lennon's voice being synthesised so they can get that the relevant song out now, have yet another Beatles release. The reality is that holograms will be replacing human beings for part of our entertainment. It's happening already. We've got ABBA not too far from here doing the ABBA-verse, and you can go along and watch that wonderful performance that they do.
But is there anything about that, what seems to be the proposed potential future, that has the capacity to make any actual human being happy? I mean, you talk about being alive virtually, as though you could be uploaded as a consciousness. Is that alive in any way that means anything?
Well, two things. Dealing with your question about happiness, because obviously it's very subjective. I think what technology is going to do is to eliminate the mundane. So you're talking about getting rid of repetitive tasks and so on and so forth to make that more efficient, which will give humans more leisure time. The question is, what will they do with that leisure time? And entertainment itself is being revolutionised. Seismic changes in entertainment. You can now beam things into your brain. It's scary stuff. You talk about I was down in Cannes, which I go regularly to launch new technology, and they have these 8K fantastic huge screens, 22.2 surround speakers. It is incredible. And I asked exactly that question, well, what next? And the next stage is they will beam things into your brain where you could effectively be shut off from the rest of the world, and you would live that particular moment.
I say leisure be damned in some ways. You know, the devil makes work for idle hands. Haven't we learned that much? This preoccupation with giving people empty time and nothing with which to fill it except video games and virtual reality.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's not life.
You need a purpose in life. And they do sort of turn around and say, look, people who retire at 60, they tend to die. Mortality rate goes through the roof if you don't have a purpose in life. So we need to make sure people continue to have a purpose.
Stay busy, that's what I say. After the break, George Galloway will be here to discuss the state of UK politics. So strap yourselves in for a lively ride.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, fellow travellers. I say politics is dead. Dead of self-inflicted wounds, indeed. A meeting of all the politicians worth listening to could, I say, take place in a telephone box with room to spare. I'm old enough to remember the politics of yesterday, when men and women of independent mind would speak their minds and damn the consequences. Of all those individuals from my youth and young adulthood, I say there's one left standing, and he joins me now to lament the state of politics in this country and elsewhere. He is George Galloway. Good evening, George Galloway.
Good evening. I don't know what I could add to your dazzling dystopian discourse. It was supreme. It should be canned and sent out across the world. You painted a picture that I don't doubt is our future. If we don't or can't end this drift, we are a people adrift, like a cork on the English Channel, and the RNLI sure ain't going to pick us up, Neil. They're busy.
No, indeed, George. Where did it all go wrong? Do you look back to a period of time, an individual, and say that was where we started to be unmoored from our safe anchorage?
I would say the Blair era was the beginning of most of our modern ills. It certainly was the beginning of this coming together, ideologically speaking, of the parties at Westminster. They're all Blairites now. Rishi Sunak could easily serve in a Tony Blair cabinet. Keir Starmer might not even make the cut in a Tony Blair cabinet, but not for ideological reasons. The Liberals, the Nationalists, they're all Blairites. Not so much two cheeks of the same backside, but increasingly one cheek of that backside. A one-cheeked backside doesn't sound very functional, but I think that's what we have got. And our society, your own news bulletins, make plain what the result is. Our cops are festooned in rainbows and twerking at the crowd, although we've still got the Notting Hill Carnival to come, remember, while there's an absolute crime wave. The Mayor of London talks about clean air and pronouns, whilst anyone with teenage children would be in a state of terror if their children were outside the house after nightfall, and not even after nightfall. Our army is about to ban the use of the title rifleman and guardsman, because that's the big priority for our armed forces right now, is ruminating on masculinity in language and titles. We really are up the creek without a paddle, Neil.
It comes to it, George, when we're looking in the rearview mirror at the days when at least the bottom had two cheeks rather than only one. That's the parlous state of affairs, that we can only lament the absence of the other cheek. Do we still, would you say, at all breed the kind of people who used to be drawn to politics? People like yourself. And if so, where are they now?
It wouldn't appear to be. I mean, I'm a working class man from a council house, mother and father factory workers, left school at 16, went to work in a factory. Nowadays, parliamentarians think Swarfega is a Balearic island. They've never faced an angry gaffer. They've never heard the clatter of machinery. Indeed, machinery doesn't clatter much in our country now at all. We have cleansed the halls of Westminster of people like me, and not just people like me. Mr. Benn, for example, came from a very different social strata to me, but he was intellectually honest and rigorous, and we simply don't have that anymore. We don't even have colourful people anymore, let alone colourful people with a purpose. I mean, Boris Johnson had no purpose, really, but at least he had some colour. And now, as you say, he's writing columns for a national newspaper about the size of his gut, which I suppose kind of sums it all up.
George, bear with me while I also bring into this conversation Andrew Eborn, lawyer, who's with me in the studio. Andrew, surely it is the case that you and I both remember a time when there were politicians worthy of the name who, whether I agree with them or whether they made you furiously angry, they were truthful. You know, you could tell that they were saying something that they thought, and they were prepared to say it and stand by it, even if it meant that their parliamentary colleagues might briefly disown them.
No, you're absolutely right. And they always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. And I think the trust in politicians now is at an all-time low. And it was George Orwell, 1984, the past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became truth. And I think the more that you see these headlines about lies coming out and what do we do as a result of it, the bigger the problem is. And to be fair to Boris's column, it is interesting, it's not just about losing his gut, it's more about the political side. He was mentioning that side because he was saying the people around him, and he was quoting Shakespeare and Julius Caesar, he recognised that the people who might want to challenge him for the leadership were starting to lose weight. So they were taking this Ozempic, which sounds like somebody who used to go out with the cheeky girls. They were taking this to work on the basis that they would lose weight. And that's why he was quoting that side from Julius Caesar, saying, let me surround myself by fat men because they don't have any ambition to take over. But that was the relevant sort of principle.
George, I listened to you speak, and it seems to me that it's the loss of honesty and it's the disinclination to speak instinctively the truth that occurs to all of us in reality. And that rather than, as politicians seem to do, running it through some kind of filter or public relations filter to see how it might play, they say that which they think will cause them the least amount of trouble. Where did the truthful people go who just, without running it through a filter, just said, I'll tell you what I think of that, and spoke from the heart?
Well, it's not ancient history. I mean, I entered the House of Commons about 35 years ago, and the House was, if not full, then moderately stacked with men and women of independent mind on all sides. 100, 150 maybe out of a chamber of 650 were people who, when they rose to catch the speaker's eye, one had no real idea what they were going to say. Were they going to toe the government's line or the official opposition's line? Maybe it all went wrong, and I was there the day it happened. The Labour MPs under Tony Blair were all given pagers. Only Mr. Benn and myself had no pager. And so I actually recall the first moment in parliamentary history when hundreds of MPs went into their pocket at the same time, took out a little device and read the line to take. And that may, looking back on it, have been the moment when it all changed. But there were many people in Parliament who not only were of independent mind, of unpredictable stance on an issue, there were also 100 or more people that you could quite easily see as taking over as Prime Minister in the afternoon. I'm certain that you cannot say that now. Not even the leading pretenders
George,
for the parliamentary throne
if I can just jump
seen in your mind's eye as potential prime ministers.
Can I just jump in before I lose you, courtesy of the truncheon of time? Is there a way to extricate ourselves from this? Does the world of politics still hold the possibility of fixing what is wrong, or do we need another arena altogether?
Well, if you keep doing the same old, you'll get the same old, same old. It's really a definition of madness. Keep voting for that one cheek of the same backside, you'll get the same ordure. People have to think outside the box. People have to arise and stand up and be counted. Because one thing you perhaps missed in your wonderful monologue is that in Britain, the great majority of people want actually not much to do with either of these main parties or any of these main parties. The none of the above party is actually the largest constituency of all. And is it beyond our brain's imagination to find a way of channeling that, even under our dysfunctional electoral system? I hope not.
Wonderful, George. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to have you with us this evening. And, I for one, I hope you will continue to speak as one of independent mind. That's what you've always been, and I hope that's what you'll always be. So thank you very much, George Galloway, for being with us this evening. That's the state of play here. But is it just as chaotic across the pond? Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas will be here to tell us about Joe Biden, Donald Trump and Julian Assange after the break. Back in 3 minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back. I would say that to watch US politics now is to feel as though I've walked through a doorway into a parallel universe where up is down and wrong is apparently right. I grew up and then lived most of my life believing the US was the land of the free. To be honest, I don't think that anymore. Sometimes I wonder if in this parallel universe the White House is inhabited not by the good guys of the West Wing, but by a real-life version of the Corleone crime family, or perhaps just the Keystone Cops. Joining me now to contemplate what I describe as an American political world gone stark, staring bonkers, is Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, thanks for coming in. Is my cynicism in the face of what we seem to be seeing play out in the US overblown?
No, unfortunately it's not, Neil. It's a real mess right now. And it's, there's been a lot of drama the last 8 years, but there's been particularly a lot of drama in the last 2. And it's not good for the country at all.
What are we to make of, first of all, I would say, Biden's administration's attempts to jail his strongest political opponent?
Yeah.
Whatever anyone thinks of Donald Trump.
Right. You can be a critic of President Trump. You can be an opponent of President Trump, and several of them have commented on this. But at the same time, the weaponization of the justice system, the politicization of the whole apparatus in Washington is really troubling. And you should be really careful. And there is discretion. You don't have to prosecute these things. And so, we have in New York and all over the country, but especially in New York, where you have Alvin Bragg indicting the president for a misdemeanor and making it a felony, whereas with real street criminals, where there's real violence and real problems, reducing felony arrests to misdemeanors. So it's opposite world. It's really disturbing. And so this was a big mistake, I think. Perhaps it will backfire on the Democrats. It most likely helps Trump in the near term, but could hurt him in the long term.
I mean, can you see any way in which Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States of America, ends up in jail? Or does this actually just fast-track him to the White House?
It's definitely, in many ways, helping him in the nomination process. Who knows what effect it will have on the general? Probably negative, because a lot of independents might be turned off by all the drama. But what's important is that the Democrats have gone ahead with this prosecution that they didn't have to do, and it's also brought up the really troubling narrative that there's a two-tier justice system, that the double standard is outrageous. After the Hillary email scandal, where they decided Comey said no reasonable prosecutor would file this case. You've got the Biden family cartel and also President Biden's document problems as well. So this really is showing a two-tiered system, and that's what's really troubling. So I don't think he'll go to jail, but then again, I didn't think they'd indict him either. So this is unprecedented.
Andrew, when you, like me, we look on at that. We're of a generation who we grew up watching America as the goodies, as the good guys. What do you feel when you watch the most recent
I think
events?
it's extraordinary, but it's a very predictable course of action, isn't it? Because all that's going to happen is the support for Trump, because he's controlling the narrative, will galvanise. He said this is going to happen. He said the justice system is going to be weaponised. So, surprise, surprise, when it does get weaponised, all that's going to happen is his supporters will say, he predicted this, he is the Messiah, we're going to follow him. And this is going to be the problem. So I'm with you on this. I think it's an extraordinary state of affairs. But you raised the question about Joe Biden. Where is he at the moment, where he's coming from, and whether it's a joke that misfired. He talked about his little notes. He made a joke a couple of days ago on the same sort of basis. Talked about the notes that he did, but he's not going to release those, or he's going to make sure he hands them over. And it wasn't quite a joke. We weren't quite sure about it, and so on and so forth. And he had the fall. They talk about Fall 24 and that cartoon they had, I think, in the Times last week, saying, "I didn't realise I had so many." But it was working on that sort of basis. I don't know if he's been deliberately portrayed in the media on this sort of basis, because you would think that the people behind him would try and protect him in a sort of way, so you don't have these opportunities to basically go wrong.
Yeah, I think they're very nervous, and that's why they keep him away from press conferences. He does very little press. He doesn't answer questions, and anytime he's asked about his own family problems or the Biden cartel, he just ignores it and treats it as some kind of offensive question. But and so they do a good job of keeping him from speaking to the press, from speaking off the teleprompter. He only works a 4-hour day. They put the powder on him, they get him all dolled up, give him some green drink in the morning, and he goes down to the office for 4 hours.
Do you think they'll really go the length of really going for the second term? And if not, then who? Obviously we've got Robert Kennedy Jr. now has emerged as a very charismatic figure, to say the least. Or what do the Dems do?
There is no way they're going to run him in 2024. It's obscene. I know that's the story they're going with now. Perhaps he didn't want to be a so-called lame duck president and announce too early.
Right.
The last one who did this was LBJ in 1968. He didn't announce that he wasn't running until March of '68. So maybe they wait another year, let Gavin Newsom in California or some other, sort of candidate that's more realistic than RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson. Let someone else get ready. I mean, clearly Newsom is running. He's been dropping the hints, and I think you'll see him.
And to be fair, are the Republicans in any better? Are they in much better shape? Really?
Are.
I mean, because the whole thing's beginning to look like a clown show.
Yeah, when you have too many people piling on, you've now got 8 or 9 candidates that have announced. That's not good, right? Because you need to consolidate ultimately around 1 or 2, and that's important. But it's early, and it's a great bench. Any number of those candidates would be good presidents. I would argue for Ron DeSantis, number 1, of course. But Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, these are all good people and good candidates. And I think that, so the Republicans have a much bigger bench. The Democrats really don't have a bench. I mean, you have two fringe candidates. You know, RFK Jr. seems like a good guy. He polls very well in terms of his favorables. People like him. But, you know, he is a fringe candidate. Right. He's polling at 20. Marianne Williamson, who's a fringier candidate, is polling at 10. So you have an incumbent president that's only polling at 70 in his own party. And 70% of Americans don't want him to run again. That's not a good sign. Anytime a president that's an incumbent polls below 90, he loses.
So isn't it better, then, to make that decision quickly?
Going to have to jump in. We're just running out of time.
Tactically, yes.
I would just say the bin fire keeps raging at the moment.
Oh, yeah. It's not going away. And this might have been the last straw, this indictment. There'll be pushback from this.
Greg Swinson, again, thank you very much for your time.
Good to be here, Neil.
Coming up, we'll be joined by a paleontologist from Portsmouth University who's going to tell us about a truly remarkable find on the Isle of Wight.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. And now, as we say, for something completely different. A 127 million year old fossil of something called a side-necked turtle. The first found to have lived in the United Kingdom has been discovered on the coast of the Isle of Wight. The fossil has been nicknamed Burby after fossil enthusiast Steve Burbridge, who found it at Brook Bay on the southwest coast. Paleontologist Megan Jacobs from the University of Portsmouth analysed the fossil and confirmed it to be the earliest of the side-necked turtles. She joins me now. Megan, are you there? This is this kind of...
I am, hello.
It's lovely to have you. I love stories like this. They just... When someone says 127 million years old, that my head opens like a flip-top bin and my brain comes out on a spring. But tell me, as a scientist, what is the significance of this find?
So, first of all, it's the first occurrence of this type of turtle in the UK. It's only ever found in Europe, and it's the oldest one as well. So it pushes back the age of this group of turtles. But what was even more cool is we actually micro-CT scanned this turtle. We could see some little bones sticking out the side, thinking, oh, they might belong to the turtle, they might not. We'll see what's in there. And we had it done initially at the hospital here on the island, and it didn't pick up anything. But we were thinking, well, maybe the slices are a bit too big. So we had it done professionally at Portsmouth, and it had every single bone inside.
Wow.
So it has all the backbones, the pelvis, the limbs, which is just extraordinary. And they're millimetres across. They're so tiny.
So it's like a mince pie, but with all the filling under the crust.
Yeah.
What is the closest living descendant of this side-necked turtle? Is there anything swimming in the modern seas that comes from this creature?
So these are they're a freshwater species, and we do have modern side-neck turtles alive today. So if you go somewhere nice and tropical in the States or even Asia, you find these side-neck turtles, and they're sort of somewhat related to this animal. We don't have direct descendants from this still alive.
Right,
but they're within the same group.
And for the audience, why are they called side-necked turtles? What is that descriptive of?
So these turtles, people probably have this idea that a turtle can stick its head back into its shell when it's scared to avoid predators, whereas this one, it can't do that. What it does is it turns its head to the side, and the whole neck and head go sort of sideways into the shell, and it looks out with one eye. Which is side neck. They're very, very strange. They're really long neck.
Andrew Eborn is with me in the studio.
Hi, Megan. How are you doing?
It's 127 million years old. It looks like a pebble that has come to light.
But what I love as well, Neil and Megan, is that they've also discovered a new dinosaur on the Isle of Wight. So it's obviously a rich source of all sorts of wonderful things at the moment. So quite incredible.
Megan, why is that? We do hear of a disproportionate amount of ancient things coming to light, first of all, on the Isle of Wight.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. So I think we're lucky enough to have really, really fossiliferous rocks here on the island.
What a lovely word, fossiliferous.
Fossiliferous. So the Cretaceous rocks here on the island, right at the bottom of the island, are literally, they're full of dinosaurs, crocodiles, turtles, fish. And there's so much research going on now on all of these animals that it's all coming to light, and we're finding more and more every year. It's an exciting place to be if you're a paleontologist.
Yeah, so Andrew, Isle of Wight is a sort of Jurassic Park.
Oh, absolutely. And my father used to live in Lyme Regis along that Jurassic coast and things like that. And actually, one of the lodges that my mother had, he used to work at Boxgrove, and they found the shin of half a million.
Half a billion.
Yeah, it was about 500,000, whatever it was. Years old.
Half a million, yeah.
Yeah, the shin. And basically, the Boxgrove, it was called Roger after Roger Pedersen. So I love the thing about that coast. What I also love, Megan, is you must be discovering many more potential dinosaurs out there. This is, I think they were saying that the last one was 1865. Presumably, then, if they keep digging, you're going to find lots more of these.
Is it just a treasure trove, Megan?
Yeah, new dinosaurs are coming out every year.
Hurrah!
People think dinosaurs are rare, but they're not here. There's skeletons coming out every day, bits of skeletons.
Oh, look, we've just lost the link to Megan, but I think Megan had told us what she came to say. I think that's a wonderful story, you know, to hear about something 127 million years old, and even to contemplate. I would say,
I love it.
What our part of the world was even like when that turtle was bobbing about in the shallows.
I think you're right. And what I also love is how they might compare, get the different sciences to basically map out what life might have been like then. You can also have, if you can start extracting DNA, the whole idea of Jurassic Park no longer being fiction but a fact could be glorious.
So much more to learn. That's it for this week. Thanks to all my guests. I'll see you same time next Saturday. Thank you, Andrew, for being
Pleasure
with
to
me.
see you.
Next up, it's Calvin Robinson and the Common Sense Crusade. Bring it on.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been an unsettled first half of the weekend and that's not going to change tomorrow. This unsettled weather is all due to this area of low pressure that's out to the west of the UK, bringing various occlusions in from the southwest, and these are a bit of a focus for some heavy showers and thunderstorms. Now looking at the detail for this evening, and thunderstorms and showers that we've seen through today will continue tonight and push north-eastwards. There will be a few clearer spells as well around this evening, but for North Sea coast, low cloud will push in as well. And this cloud and some of the rain we've had around today will make for another warm and humid night. So to start Sunday, it'll be quite unsettled for some, with showers already to start the morning. Some places will see a bit of hazy brightness as well before we see further heavy showers and thunderstorms popping up, especially as we get closer towards lunchtime. Temperature-wise tomorrow, though, it'll be similar to today, though where we see any prolonged spells of showers, things will feel a little cooler under those cloudier skies. Now, we do have 2 yellow thunderstorm warnings out from 12 o'clock tomorrow, and this is due to plenty of thunderstorms around during tomorrow evening especially, and these will push northwards throughout the afternoon and overnight to clear Scotland during Monday morning. And this could bring some disruption tomorrow evening, so do check the weather if you are travelling. It will mean that it will be quite a warm and humid start again on Monday morning, but a bit more in the way of brightness, especially across England and Wales. A bit cloudier with some rain across Scotland to start the new week. But further south, showers will soon develop as we go towards Monday afternoon. And not much will change throughout the rest of the week, with showers continuing, though it will stay warm and humid.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories.